Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a name you probably think you know, Styx. But I want you to forget for a minute about the gloomy river. We're going to talk about a cosmic war, a game-changing alliance, and what is, without a doubt, the most powerful promise in all of Greek mythology. So let me ask you this. What does it take to make a promise truly, absolutely unbreakable? In the world of the ancient gods, the answer wasn't some fancy contract. It was a river. We all know the name River Styx, but its real power, you see, wasn't in its water, but in the oath that carried its name.
So, when most of us hear Styx, we think of a place, right? That dark, spooky river that basically draws a line between our world, the world of the living, and Hades, the realm of the dead. It's the ultimate frontier, that final crossing. And that image, wow, it is powerful. You have the silent ferryman, Charon, guiding souls across these murky waters. It's a picture that's so deeply embedded in our culture. But believe it or not, that is just scratching the surface of the story.
Okay, here's where the story takes a really sharp turn. Styx wasn't just a place. She was a deity, a goddess in her own right, and a seriously powerful and ancient one at that. She was around way before the famous Olympians we all know.
I mean, just take a look at her family tree. Her parents were the Titans Oceanus and Tethys, so she was basically ocean royalty. But now, look at her children with the Titan palace. They weren't just gods. They were the living, breathing embodiments of victory, strength, force, and glory. Can you imagine having those concepts as your actual kids? That's the level of power we're dealing with here.
So, when Zeus decided to start his rebellion against his father, Cronus, and the other Titans, he put out a call for allies. And this was a huge risk. You had to pick a side. But Styx, taking her father's advice, didn't even hesitate. She was the very first deity to show up and pledge her loyalty, and her incredibly powerful children, to Zeus's cause.
And that one single act of loyalty, picking the winning team right at the beginning, it catapulted her straight to the center of the entire Greek pantheon. It earned Styx an honor unlike anything else.
Zeus's reward completely changed the game. He elevated Styx from just another river goddess to the very embodiment of cosmic law and truth. From that moment on, to swear on Styx wasn't just making a promise, it was swearing on something absolute. Even the epic poet Homer knew how huge this was. In the Iliad, he calls it the most fearsome, the most serious promise a god could ever make. Think about that. Even Zeus himself was bound by an oath if it was sworn on her name.
Of course, for an oath to be that powerful, the consequences for breaking it have to be truly terrifying. I mean, we're talking about immortal beings here. The poet Hesiod lays out the punishment, and it is chilling. The punishment was, well, it was devastating. For an entire year, the god who broke their promise would lie in a coma, basically a living death. Then, for 9 more years, they faced total exile. That's a social death, banned from all the parties, all the meetings on Olympus. For an immortal being, a decade of complete isolation was a fate almost worse than death itself.
Now, that terrifying power might actually have roots in the real world. This is where the story gets even more fascinating, moving from the realm of gods and myth to a very real and very dangerous place right here on Earth. See, in a region of Greece called Arcadia, there's a real waterfall called Mavroneri, which means black water. And the local legends said its water was so bitingly cold and so caustic that it was a deadly poison. They claimed it could dissolve any cup or vessel you put it in, unless that vessel was made from a horse's hoof. So you have this real-world dread that perfectly mirrors its mythological twin.
And this connection between myth and reality was so strong that when Alexander the Great died under mysterious circumstances, ancient historians actually whispered that he'd been poisoned with water from the Arcadian Styx. That's how powerful this legend was. It became a potential explanation for the death of one of the greatest figures in all of history.
So why are we still talking about this? Why does this ancient story still matter? Well, because this figure, who's part goddess, part river, part unbreakable oath, is still woven into our culture, often in ways we don't even realize.
Her name literally lives on in our language. Whenever we describe something as Stygian, we're using her name to invoke that same exact feeling of impenetrable, underworld darkness from the ancient myths. And her influence just pops up everywhere. You have the famous hero Achilles, made nearly immortal when his mom dipped him in the river, all except for that one vulnerable spot on his heel.
Or fast forward to Dante's Inferno, where the Styx shows up again, this time as a miserable swamp in the fifth circle of hell. And get this, as recently as 2013, astronomers looked out to the dwarf planet Pluto and officially named one of its tiny moons Styx.
Which really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Styx represented an absolute truth, an unbreakable promise backed by a terrible consequence. In our modern world, with all of our digital agreements and words that can seem so fleeting, what holds that kind of weight for us? What would be our river Styx today?